What? Let me tell you a little bit about what I was thinking of doing this evening. If you were here last time, I'm very grateful to you actually, because at the end I said I'm often lost for themes or ideas or whatever to say something about, and I kind of begged you to come up with some suggestions, and sure enough, you did. And so somebody said something about developing compassion. By the way, I hope these folks are here tonight. So somebody said something about compassion. So I had Odin put up on the website or wherever this goes, cultivating compassion. And I certainly want to do a bit of that. And then somebody else also said what I think is a great question, as it were, is, so how do you meditate when you're in pain or in poor health? And so what I thought I'd do is this. Maybe spend a bit more time at the end to talk about pain and poor health. I think do that at the end. So we'll sort of sit for maybe a little bit shorter than usual, something like that. And then I'll give more time to that topic. And then, we can have a discussion and questions and answers. Now, one thing I've almost forgotten to mention was that I'm not sure, I think this may be being recorded. So if you have a problem about that, do switch off your mics and your cameras. There again, I was getting messages I don't understand from Wongdo and Odin beforehand, which was something like, well, even if you don't switch off your mics and your cameras, you won't be recorded. You make a decision. You know more about, at least as much about the technology as I do. So I think this may be being recorded. I'm not sure. So let's, goodness me, 38 people. Welcome to newcomers. Very good. Haven't really done anything yet, except I was just thanking people for their suggestions at the end of the class a week ago. And as a result of that, I'm going to say something about developing compassion. It's kind of ironic, actually, that I should be saying something about compassion tonight, because simultaneously, the Buddhist Society's Tibetan class, meditation class, is on. And if you know anything about Mahayana Buddhism or Vajrayana Buddhism, which in plain English is Tibetan Buddhism, they put a lot of emphasis on compassion. These crucial Buddhist qualities of wisdom and compassion. And in the Mahayana traditions, compassion is the most important quality. Anyway, it's little old us talking about compassion tonight because I was asked to do so. And then another suggestion was, what about meditating? Any tips about meditating when we're in pain or unwell, bad, poor health, or anything like that? And I would like to say something about that, but I'm going to do it at the end, I think, at the end of the class. And that means, I think, maybe we won't meditate for quite so long, to give a bit more space at the end to say something about pain. That's quite important too, isn't it? Because the starting point for Buddhist practice is wanting to do something about dukkha, whatever that means, unsatisfactoriness. Anyway, enough chat for the moment. Let's do some ordinary basic meditation. That's the name of the class anyway. So, please forgive me if you heard this from me 100 times before. You know what to do, just ignore it. And there again, please, if you've got a meditation practice which you're content with, please continue with it now. It's a good opportunity to do it. And there again, although I shall be giving what I hope are helpful tips, ignore them as well. Experienced meditators know how to leave sounds sort of at the ears, leave it at the doorway, without inviting these things in to become interruptions. So anyway, posture. I can't look around and see how you're all sitting. But the posture is an alert and relaxed posture, whatever that means to you, an alert and relaxed posture. Actually, in a way, the most important thing, and this is just my take on it, the most important thing is to come with an open mind. And no great projects this evening, please. Just come here to sit. Come and sit. Come and sit with us. That's all. That's it. And now the posture, an alert, relaxed posture. Why do I suggest an alert, relaxed posture? Because I think alert and relaxed kind of is a physical, it's a physical aspect of these two properties of whatever it is we mean by mindfulness, or whatever I mean by mindfulness. Let's be honest about this. My take on mindfulness is the practice of noticing what's going on in the mind, in consciousness, but not attaching to it. Noticing and not attaching. Noticing and letting go. So I like to use this phrase, letting go. Actually, it's a phrase you've got to find if you're interested in Pali. There is a phrase there, a word there, which means letting go, but you don't see it that often. Non-attachment, however, you see much more often, and not clinging. Noticing and letting go. To notice, I think you've got to be alert. I think I've got to be alert. Right? So I'm sitting reasonably upright. But if I'm sitting upright and putting a lot of energy and effort into it, I'm going to be suffering. My back is going to hurt. Or if I'm sitting on the floor, in the early days at the Buddhist Society, when I'd come to the Buddhist Society, I sat on the floor and the teacher came from the Zen class and he just sat on the floor or else. And he sat very still on the floor and it was agony. For me, and I don't want anybody to suffer any more than we do normally, actually. So an alert posture, but a comfortable, stable posture. If we're comfortable, we're not going to move a lot. Stable, alert, relaxed. Alert, relaxed equals stable. That's great. Then again, everybody's got to experiment and figure out exactly what that means themselves. How you sit, how many cushions you sit on. What do you do with your hands? Park them somewhere out of the way. Eyes open or closed. Your decision, I suggest, closing the eyes. Why? This is all about turning the attention inwards. And as we're probably practicing at home, in a place we're familiar with, there's not a lot to see that we haven't already looked at. So close the eyes. I suggest. These are all suggestions. And we've set up the posture. Why don't we scan the body for a few moments? Bring attention to the body. And how does it feel? And I don't really mean how it feels in terms of sort of an opinion. It's not thinking about the body. That's called thinking. This is about experiencing the body, as it presents right now, shorn of any theory, as it were. Shorn of any opinions, really, other than the most basic ones, like, it feels like this. It feels like this. And how does it feel? Well, you can tell me, but quietly. What do we notice as we sit here? Heaviness of the body. You can feel it sitting on something. Yeah. And whether we're hot or cold, maybe it's a stuffy room, maybe you got the windows open. Is there stiffness in the body? Are we feeling pretty loose? And there's movement. Even though we're sitting still, we're moving, breathing. And then we can attend to the body in a little more detail. You can't miss the feeling of sitting on whatever you're sitting on, a chair, a cushion, a bench. Can't miss that. So just notice that. Feeling of sitting and sensations in the legs. If we're sitting on the floor, lots of sensations in the legs. Maybe a bit of a stretch over the knees. If we're sitting on a chair, I hope our feet are probably on the floor, actually. So notice the feet on the floor. Notice sensations in the legs, in the feet. And then as we come up the body, already notice the feeling of sitting, the point of contact between backside and bench or whatever it is, chair we're sitting on. And sensations around the hips, maybe they're a bit kind of creaky. Just notice that. A bit of stiffness. Or not. Into the pelvic area. What's going on in the abdomen? Feeling hungry? Just had something to eat. Well, you sort of feel it there, don't you? And you notice the belly breathing. Rising and falling. That's the way the Burmese often practice mindfulness of breathing, by that, being aware of that sensation in the belly, contemplating the navel. Coming up the body, warmth of the trunk of the body, any sensations, clothing, rib cage expanding and contracting, heartbeat, heartbeat. Up to the collarbone area. Okay, let's just check out the arms. Hands are touching something, they're very sensitive. We've put them somewhere and they probably feel warm and they're touching something, maybe each other. Wrists, forearms, and elbows, biceps, triceps, armpits, shoulders. And as we do this little rather rapid body scan, if we see anything like tension, if we detect it, and if we want to relax, it's a good time to do it. Supposing you're a bit tense, shoulders are a bit up in the air, and you'd like to relax, breathe out. Feel the weight of the arms, just pulling the shoulders down a bit. Haven't mentioned the back. Any sensations in the back at all? Or the sides of the body? And then to the throat, the neck. Mouth closed, lips touching, saliva in the mouth, tongue touching something. Skin on the face. Warm, is it? Or not? Breath on the nostrils. In-breath, out-breath. Eyelids. Are they touching? Oh, if the eyes are closed, you can be aware of the eyelids touching. Eyebrow. I hope we're not trying too hard. Well, you get a headache. That's not what this is about at all. Sensations around the ears. Anything? The scalp. Top of the head. I always like to. It's quite fun, I find. I find this exercise fun, because we're noticing massive sensations that you can't miss. Like the weight of the body on the cushion. And then we also notice when there's nothing to notice, there's no sensation. At least it's not on the top of my head at the moment. So we're noticing something big, we're noticing something that doesn't exist at the moment. That's interesting. So there's the body, shorn of all kind of concepts and identification. We're all experiencing the same sort of physical sensational stuff. Sensational or not. Just ordinary sensations in the body. We might return to the body a bit later on, but let's go to the mind, the mood. How's the mood tonight? Upbeat, downbeat. Tense. Tension. When we're sort of locking on to something tense, you can sort of feel it in the. I sort of imagine, and this is imaginary, that the brain has a sort of muscle in it, and when there's something, quote, on my mind, unquote, that muscle locks around it, you see. And just as we can let go of a clenched fist or shoulders up around our ears, we can actually let go of that pretend brain muscle. It's gone. How's the mood anyway? Light, dark, cheerful, miserable, furious, at peace with all living beings. Just know it, actually, just notice that. And we notice the thinking as well. There'll be thoughts. And that's quite okay. That's quite okay. And the practice is to notice whatever's going on. Feelings in the body, sensations in the body, breathing in the body, stuff in the mind, moods coming and going. Yeah, it's quite fun to make a little mental note at the beginning of a period of meditation, what the mood is, and then at the end, just what's happened to it. Has it sort of strengthened, weakened, gone away, been replaced by another mood altogether? And we're learning about impermanence. I talked, I think, last week about intuition. There's an intuitive understanding of this sort of unpredictability, instability of our experience, the way moods change. And then thinking changes all the time, doesn't it? Flip-flops around, goes back into the past, into the future. And that's nature too. This is nature study. The Buddha sees the Dharma. And one way of understanding that is we're wising up and doing a bit of nature study. What we're doing is nature study. We're looking at our own ordinary human nature in a rather stand back, sort of wise kind of perspective, from a wise perspective. Because normally it's very reactive, isn't it? We react to thinking and we react to sensations, all that sort of thing. And we're just stepping back a bit from that now, just watching it, observing it, but not getting trapped by it, ideally. And that's where the meditation object comes in. If you've been doing meditation a while, you'll have a meditation object. If you haven't, try the breath, the feeling of breathing, rhythm of the breath. Don't control it, just pay attention to it. Follow it, breathing in, breathing out, around the nostrils, the belly, anywhere else, peaceful, always there, but always changing. Not stimulating. So that's a bit of a challenge, because we quite like stimulus. Not stimulating, quite tranquilizing. And that's the anchor. The anchor keeps the boat from bobbing off too far. The breath, if we're using it as the meditation object, is a reference point. So that when the attention wanders, we notice that, we attend to the attention. We attend to what the monkey mind is up to, and very gently but firmly bring it back to the breath. In breath, out breath, long breath, short breath, deep or shallow. If we like, we can use the out breath on which to just relax a bit. The effort required in this practice is very subtle, isn't it? And because the meditation object is not remotely stimulating, you've got to exercise a bit of effort not to let the monkey mind wander too far. But it doesn't require us to sort of nail the attention on the breath. That's just so stressful. But the best way to kind of make following the breath easy is to actually enjoy it, to enjoy the breath. To appreciate its peacefulness, its calming. We want to do things we enjoy. That's the way we're set up. And if we enjoy breathing in and out, so it doesn't require a huge amount of effort, to notice that, to appreciate that. And when the mind wanders, it's quite nice to let go of that, whatever the mind is after, and bring it back, bring the attention back to the breath. So I want to say a word or two about cultivating compassion. Cultivating compassion. And what we mean by compassion is, well, it's what happens. Compassion is what happens when loving kindness, metta, encounters suffering. So what compassion is, karuna, it's what they call a divine abiding. A divine abiding, along with metta, which I'm hoping everybody here knows a bit about metta practice, because we've done it in the class here. So anyway, compassion happens, as a kind, loving, caring response to other people's suffering or other beings' suffering, including our own. The wish is, may all beings be free from suffering. That's the essence of it, a heartfelt wish. May all beings be free from suffering. And it comes from, the root cause of the importance of this practice is it comes from wisdom. And the wisdom is appreciating, understanding that we're all of us here, we're all what they call brothers and sisters in dukkha, in unsatisfactoriness. We're all subject to old age, sickness and death, not getting what we want, getting what we don't want, and on and on and on. I mean, that's the human condition. And if we're all brothers and sisters in dukkha, the practice is standing in other people's shoes, because we're all sort of experiencing the same kind of stuff. So it's when loving kindness, metta, bumps into, encounters, and pain and suffering. So the basis of the practice is, in my opinion, metta practice. Now, we have done metta practice not that long ago in the class. I mean, I remember just before the last class, I think it was before Valentine's Day, we spent most of the time generating loving kindness to ourselves and all sentient beings. And so that's the starting point for cultivating. It's a practice that has to be cultivated, it has to be worked at, for cultivating compassion. So the starting point, as I say, is metta. And the mantra, if you like, in metta practice, the thinking part of metta practice, the verbal part of metta practice is saying to ourselves, may I be well, free from all suffering. May others be well. May others be free of all suffering. And it's this wish of well-being, which is at the heart of the matter. Now, if I was encouraging metta practice this evening, I'd say the way to do it, since we begin by developing this quality of kindness and compassion for ourselves, to bring to mind our own good qualities. And this is because a lot of us need self-compassion. We beat ourselves up a hell of a lot sometimes. So it's terribly important to correct the balance. I mean, not to think we're the greatest thing, since sliced bread or the Buddha, but just to reflect on our own good qualities. And then, of course, to be aware of our own need for tender loving care, because we all suffer. And I think this is not self-pity. This is just a wise recognition of the human condition. That's what's a fact. So, we genuinely wish well-being for ourselves. We wish that we're free from all suffering, of course. And so I suggest, if we were going to do it, and actually in this sort of second part of the sit, we could do it. And I won't, give guidance, but what one could do is to go back to how we started this evening with a body scan. because there's a lot of dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, pain, and whatever around the body, isn't there? I mean, just often we're terribly concerned with self-image, aren't we? That gives a lot of grief sometimes. And that's as well as problems of health and aging and our perception and other people's perceptions, perhaps, of our physical imperfections. You know, so why don't we work with sending compassion to the body? Why don't we do that? But it's not just, you know, everything is bad there again. As we do this practice, we could, in a sense, quietly express our gratitude to our the good features of the physical body, which we take for granted. We take for granted. So, for example, I mean, it's like, I don't know. I mean, I'm getting a bit old, but I can still get up the stairs. That's great. And my digestion's pretty good. This is what we take for granted. So I think it's a good idea as we do a body scan. Obviously, we're going to come across parts of the body which we're not very happy with. And so we want to send, you know, kind, compassionate, accepting thoughts to it. But we also want to say thank you, as it were, to the fact that things could be a lot worse. Could be a lot worse, you know. I mean, I'm wearing glasses. And it's like, my eyesight could be a lot worse than that. I'm grateful for that. I'm wearing hearing aids. You know, I'm getting a bit deafer. But, you know, I can still function pretty well. You appreciate that sort of thing. So this is a practice about, you know, accepting our limitations and being grateful for what we often take for granted. And the end product is to, you know, is to answer the question positively, can we be comfortable in our own skin? So what anybody who wants to do this now can do is to scan the body. So scan your body, you know, from top to toe to top, but with an attitude of deliberately, an attitude of tenderness, of kindness, of gratitude. You know, it's like if I was doing this, I'd be thinking, you know, may my knees be well. Nothing wrong with that. Got a bit of a knee problem. And appreciating, you know, the bits that function. And if you encounter any part of the body which is difficult in some sense to work with, you just move on. You just move on. So a compassionate body scan is a very nice to do. A metaphor body scan. You know, I've done that, and it's sort of like a good massage. You can try that. You can try that. But of course, the other thing is, may I be well, may others be well. And there's a lot of suffering in the world, in case you hadn't noticed. Yeah, I was going to say particularly now, but there's always a lot of suffering in the world. So just as with metta practice, may I be well, may others be well, may I be well, and I bring to mind those people I really care about, people I like, I love, I'm grateful to whom I'm grateful, and wish them good stuff, so we can do it again. So wishing ourselves good health, well-being, happiness, and then bringing to mind perhaps someone we know who's having a bad time, who would really appreciate us putting our arm around them, right? We would like to help, but right now at this moment, I don't think we can. Except what we can do is to send them compassionate thoughts. There's not a cop-out right now. The very best. I wish you, you know. I mean, I'm thinking of somebody right now, actually. Somebody I just heard. Somebody I actually like quite a lot. A guy I quite like a lot, and I've just heard he's in a hospice and he's dying of cancer right now. And I can't do anything about that because I'm not allowed in there. It's just simple to see him. Right? But what I can do is to send him compassionate thoughts, but very sincerely. So if you know anybody who's having a bad time, you know, for whatever reason, bring them to mind and wish them all the very best. And equally, you know, it doesn't have to be a named individual. There's so much suffering out there in the world. You can bring to mind anonymous people. Where? Yemen, Myanmar, the Uyghurs, you know. So you can play with this practice. First of all, developing this quality of goodwill, of compassion towards ourselves and our own limitations, and then sharing these compassionate thoughts with all others, And that's a practice. So I won't say any more about that now. in the next 20 minutes, 25 minutes or so, meditate, sit, any which way you like. Right? And if you want to, experiment with compassion or just plain loving kindness, you know what to do. So set the body up, alert, relaxed posture. And then my preference is always to link these sorts of practice to the breath. I breathe in a good wish for myself. May I be well, may I be happy. And on the out breath, may this good friend, right, be well, be happy, be free from all suffering. And then the practice is gradually to expand that practice to a broader universe of people. So composing the body, checking the body out. There it is. That's the breath. Breathing in, breathing out. So, a few thoughts about meditating when we're in poor health or pain. The Buddha got old, he got sick, and he died. I was just pointing that out. Right? The Buddha, was an extraordinary, ordinary human being. And I say that because sometimes as Buddhists, we sort of get into Buddhism and, you think suffering causes suffering, cessation of suffering. I'm not going to suffer because it does depend what you mean by suffer. But it's an illusion if we think that good Buddhists don't experience pain. That's nonsense. That's nonsense. The way to not to suffer in the sense that no pain is, the orthodox Buddhist response would be, don't get reborn as a sentient being. It's as simple as that, right? But as long as we choose to be reborn, old age and sickness and pain, that's part of the deal, actually. Now, what about practicing when health's not great? Obviously, poor health is like another constraint or restriction on what we do in general, isn't it? You can't kind of leap around if you should be in bed, really. Okay, so it's a restriction on the amount of meditation we do and the sort of meditation we do. It's like, the monastics obey lots and lots of rules, which essentially are restrictions, and it's there, if you like, to help their practice. Because, you want to go somewhere and you run up against a wall, a restriction. And then you do what? You practice. So, if you want to look at the more positive side of ill health, it's like another restriction, another opportunity to practice. That's very kind of like lofty, isn't it? It's very lofty. That sort of that approach. But it's like another opportunity to practice, but it's very, very tough. In practice, let's sort of take some examples about meditating when we're not in great shape. For example, as I get older, let's be personal about it, as I get older, I can't sit on the floor. I'm sitting in a chair right now. Because I can't, it's like if I sat on the floor right now, one of you lovely people would have to come and get me up. That's the fact of the matter. It's very encouraging. I find it very encouraging, when I go to the monastery or I look at, Amaravati videos, and there's some great ones out there, by the way, and you see some monks, typically older monks, senior monks, sitting on a chair. Because I sort of thought that Buddhists had to do it on the floor. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. So, if you want to sit on the floor, you better keep your knees in pretty good shape. Otherwise, don't sit on the floor. Accept that constraint and work with it. You can be perfectly mindful sitting on a chair. Right? I love walking meditation. I really love walking meditation. But sometimes a knee gives out, and you can't do walking meditation. It's not clever to do walking meditation through a lot of quite unpleasant knee pain. So you don't do it. you don't do it. Another interesting one is, you're feeling pretty rough. Maybe you've got flu, or in my case, man flu, something like that. And I think, oh, I've just got to go to bed. I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to lie down in the lion posture on one side, my head on my hand. I'm going to lie there, and I'm going to do mindfulness of the breathing or whatever. And within moments, I've gone to sleep. I go to sleep. And that's the most compassionate thing that can happen, actually. It's the most compassionate thing that can happen. That's what the body wanted. And have a sleep, and you feel better, okay? So this is all about, in a sense, managing expectations and learning to adapt one's practice to what the body actually is telling us. The moral from what I'm saying is like, this emphasizes, the importance of doing practice when we're, bursting with good health. That's often when we don't want to do it, by the way, But it's like saving for a rainy day. It's very difficult. It's like when we're unwell for whatever reason. It is not great conditions for practice. One can sort of say it's a wonderful opportunity to develop wisdom around wisdom and compassion. But those are words, right? It's often very difficult to practice then. And the extent to which we can practice when we're sick, when we're under the weather, when we've got a bit of pain, really does depend on the extent to which we've built up a savings account, as it were, of practice when we're well. Well, that's an important lesson that I've learned. I now want to say a bit about pain. Now, I have to say that I'm not an expert on this because, I haven't, to tell you the truth, I have not experienced a lot of acute pain or chronic pain in my life. That's a treat in store, right? That's a treat in store. But I want to pass on, a little bit about managing pain, which either I have heard or to a limited extent I've experienced. Chronic pain is a real problem because it's chronic. It goes on and on and on. And that's difficult. And I don't know the answer to that. Acute pain, almost by definition, comes and it goes. It can be pretty nasty when it's there, but it sort of goes, doesn't it? It goes. I've limited experience of acute pain, to tell you the truth. My one experience of acute pain was when I was somewhere else abroad, having a good time actually, and returning back to where we were staying on a bus, quite a way we'd gone, and I suddenly had the most horrible toothache. So there you are in a foreign country. Actually, this is Christmas Eve. That's the other thing. This is Christmas Eve, a long time ago, in a foreign country where I don't speak Spanish. That's probably not in Spain, but in a Spanish-speaking country. And I suddenly have this unbelievably horrible pain. I'm stuck on this bus, and it's Christmas Eve. And this turns out to be needing root canal treatment, and that's not nice pain at all. This is acute pain, and it's like, so what do? I'm stuck on this bus until I can get back to the city, and then I might be able to find a dentist who could sort this out for me, at least temporarily. And on the other hand, it's Christmas Eve, so which dentist is going to be working? And so, just on top of the pain, which is horrible, there's all the mental stuff, isn't it? There's all the mental stuff about how am I going to handle it? What am I going to do? Okay. So what I discovered then was when you have an acute pain like that, my body at any rate tenses up. It really tenses up. And I don't know why it tenses. Well, maybe it tenses up because of all the worry and anxiety around about it. The body tenses up. So what I learned was if I can just relax the rest of the body, and ideally relax the mind as well, then just the pain, which is bad enough, but tolerable. I can live with that until I get it fixed. And that's enough. So just to relax around the pain, to let go of everything else and just be with the pain is a good start. And that's what I learned. I have nothing really to say about chronic pain, which is where it does go on and on and on. And I'm hoping some people here might have knowledge or experience which they would like to share in a moment or two. The other thing that comes out of this story is, and this is almost a sort of a cliche, and I remember when Ajahn Barry was here the other 2 weeks ago now, somebody was saying something about the important difference between pain and dukkha, Pain is, we're going to get pain. That's what the sensitive human bodies experience. They pain. What do we add on the top of it to turn it into dukkha? That's the other thing. And we can do something about that. Like maybe I learned a bit about that by just learning to relax. That helped. And perhaps not worrying quite so much about what happens when I get to town. That's more difficult. But I now want to tell a story against myself again about this difference between, pain, which is, you know what that is, and dukkha, which is all the mental stuff that goes on around about it. And needless to say, it's a story about teeth again. I guess I've got bad teeth. When was it? It was some Fridays ago. So that's right. Some Fridays ago, I was having some delicious soup. It was a thick soup, and I'd had some dental work done, and I'd got 2 temporary false teeth right in the front of my mouth. And I'm having the soup, and suddenly these teeth just fall out. Kaplop! They've just fallen out, and I wasn't biting on anything. I was having my soup, and they fell out. Now, just that in itself, I found quite shocking. Quite shocking. That was horrible, having your teeth fall out. And so I went to the telephone to phone up the dentist to get an emergency appointment, only for it to be Friday late afternoon or something. And of course, they weren't open until the following Monday. The agony. It was bad enough having these teeth in my hand, but they weren't going to be treated. Nobody could help me until Monday. And then a little penny dropped, which was actually, there was no physical pain at all. It was all stuff in my head. There was no pain. I could eat perfect. Well, I'd have to be careful eating. And I don't know whether you noticed last week, but I didn't want to smile too much when I'm doing Zoom meetings. It didn't look too good. But as long as I can live with being a bit careful about what I eat and not smiling too much, it's quite feasible. It's quite doable until I can get it fixed. In other words, that was 100% dukkha and no physical pain at all. I just noticed that. That's quite a lesson as well. Look, I'm going to stop now because I'm hoping that there are some people with much more experience than me in thinking about pain, what to do about pain and ill health and practice. So I hope you can either send a chat, and I hope Wongdu can sort of feed the chat. Oh, I can feed it through to me. Yes. I can pick up the chat. So either send chat or unmic, unmute, I mean. Wongdu, if you could make sure that everybody could unmute if they want to, please do. That's me. It's my teeth.
Yeah, they can unmute, yes.
So if you want to ask a question directly, right, please do, or send a message through by chat. Over to you. Any thoughts, first of all, about what to do, how to manage pain? I think that's really important, actually. Really important. Maybe there's somebody here who is, works in health in that area. That would be great to hear from. Next week, Richard Bober will be leading the class. And then the week after that, Ajahn Barry will be back. So that's 2 Thursdays away. And then the next Thursday is, I think it's the last class before Easter, so I'll try and look after that. And then there's a break for, I guess, a couple of weeks. I don't know for sure. Well, somebody's just sent a message through. So Ringu Tulku said there is often change in between chronic pain and some relief, I think. I'm not quite clear what's meant there, but I mean, certainly chronic pain changes. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. That's absolutely right. And just knowing that, I think is very helpful. It's not, chronic pain is not there.
I sent the second part of the question.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
We're getting there. Messages are coming in now. Right. So the next messages. Can I say something about meditating when you're in emotional pain? Well, yes. Yes, of course. Gosh, where to begin with that? The easy thing to say is to be mindful of it, to notice take something like, I'm not sure, I mean, there are so many aspects. There are so many aspects of what's involved in emotional pain. But for example, something there again, I know a little bit about, which is depression, actually, depression. Now, the interesting thing about depression is that it has definite kind of physical characteristics, like you feel like you don't want to get out from under the duvet, to put it mildly. There's this heaviness. There's people are talking about brain fog in the context of long COVID and all that, right? So there's lots of physical stuff there, right? And one can notice that, and one can practice with that. It's like, yeah, it feels like this. Notice that, back to the breath. There's heaviness, back to the breath. So you just treat it as at a physical level. A very good, even a stronger example would be dealing with anxiety. Anxiety, you've got a number of things going on there, haven't you? You've got the cause of the anxiety. There again, I'm sort of thinking about, years and years ago, I was massively overcommitted at work to zillions of different deadlines, okay? Which I probably couldn't meet. Right? I probably should have said no and not got myself in that position. But I was terribly anxious. And could I sit with that? And the answer is yes, I could. Why? Because I got it out of my head when I was sitting, right? And into my guts. Because everybody knows, I think, what anxiety feels like. It feels like butterflies in the stomach, doesn't it? At least it did to me. It feels like, just like that. It feels like you're developing an ulcer, which I was, okay? But you can sit with that. You can sit with that. So often with some of these emotional states, in emotional pain, it has it feels like something in the body. So the trick, as it were, the skill, I think, is to bring attention to the physical aspects of it, the tension in the body, the churning stomach, that, and work with that. Now, then you want to say, well, can't we do something to get to the root of the emotional pain? And the answer is maybe yes, but it depends on what the cause of the emotional pain actually is, There again, sort of a hard line, Buddhist teacher would probably say, the emotional pain is due to attachment to something, to somebody, to something. It's like, yeah, but that's true, but so what, kind of thing. That's absolutely true. The more we're attached to a relationship, a person, a job, getting what we want, avoiding what we don't want, the more we're setting ourselves up, for emotional pain when it just doesn't work out, So to get, behind all of that, I mean, I am a real believer, because I find it works, in this business of practicing loving kindness, of metta and compassion. You know, starting with yours truly, you see. I mean, with a lot of these painful emotional states, you know, I'm going, I can't handle this. I can't handle this. Maybe it's my fault, you know, I'm no good. All that kind of stuff, right? And the metta practice is, you know, to challenge that very subtly. It's not to say that's illogical. You know, it's not like hardcore, you know, therapy. No, that's wrong. It's not true. You're not saying things. But it's more like getting behind that and cultivating the opposite. You know, practices like metta, for example, it's not developing, well, maybe it is. No, it's like balancing out negativity. It's about balancing out negativity. So, for example, just bringing to mind one's own good qualities. I think that's terribly important. So when one gets in a sort of a negative, emotionally painful rut, it's like bringing to mind what's good about the situation, and in particular, what's good about ourselves. What's good about ourselves. That's good to remember that, to deliberately reflect on that. And, you know, tonight is compassion night, and wishing ourselves good things, being kind to ourselves, not judging ourselves. That's so important, isn't it, really? And, you know, we're all kind of a mixed bag of tricks. You know, there's good, there's not so good in all of us. And in these emotionally painful states, it's very it's very easy to forget, if you like, the good, as it were, in ourselves. And that's quite important. That is quite important. So I'd make that, you know, and there again, I can't give advice more specifically without knowing more about the specific problem, and this is not the occasion, obviously, for that. But my instinct would be, here's somebody who's in emotional pain. Gosh, they need a lot of tender, loving care, don't they? And if they're not getting it from somebody else, they've got to give it to themselves, you see. They've got to give it to themselves. And that's what I was sort of talking about in the break, about not the break, halfway through. And that's what I was trying to say something about when I was talking about, you know, compassion. But to me, it's compassion with loving kindness. It's when loving kindness hits pain, you know, encounters pain, you want to, you know, may all beings, including this one, be free from suffering. And as I say, to do that, it's important to wish ourselves good things, quite clearly. And it's quite okay in that situation to wish, hey, I'd be free of this terrible, you know, dark dog that's got into my head. You know, may I be free of that? You know, or if the emotional pain, you know, leads to anger, may I be free of that? No, actually, some of these emotions are attractive, even though they're negative emotions. Some of them are deliciously sort of attractive. You know, you want to hang on to these things because, you know, to be absolutely blunt about it, it's like, well, you know, if you're somebody that you know, you can be somebody who's Mr. Angry, or, you know, somebody who really is an appalling person in their own judgment, and that gives you somebody to be. But that's just another false view, you see, isn't it? You're getting to the root of it, not the root of this problem, which is false view, which is attachment to being a particular sort of person, you see. And so the thing about this Buddhist practice is undermining, you know, that attachment and liberating ourselves from these kind of false identities, which can be the cause of emotional pain. I'm not saying they always are. I hope that helped. Would anybody like to come back on that? Any more questions? I don't see anything. Right. Oh, great. Sometimes anxiety and other emotional pain as immediate cause of rehashing old problems, grievances. Focusing on physical aspects then breaks the preoccupation. Well, that's great. That's exactly it. Exactly that. Then again, personally, I always try to get out of my head and into the body. I mean, I'm a very sort of intellectual, figuring it out sort of person. A lot goes on between the ears up here. And, you know, at an emotional level, sometimes that does not help. You know, like, I confess, I overcommitted to doing various things. And you know, I could sit trying to figure everything out, to try and put it right. Okay. And maybe there's no solution. Maybe there's no solution to some of these problems which cause us grief. And how do we get a bit of space? How do we escape a little bit from these sorts of problems? Get it into the body. It feels, you know, depression feels like this. Anger feels like this. Sadness, oh, you know, guilt, remorse. They're interesting. What do they feel like? And go to the body. Because most of us can work with the way emotions manifest in the body, you know, rather than try and, you know, figure it out in the head. I mean, that's a good observation. Sometimes anxiety and other emotional pain as immediate cause of rehashing old problems and grievances. Exactly. That's getting trapped in, you know, one thought leading to another thought and forcing an emotion, reinforcing the emotion, which in turn leads to, you know, more thinking. You know, finds oneself digging a bigger and bigger hole. And you know, as the question says, focusing on the physical aspects then breaks that preoccupation, that habitual tendency. Good point. Good point. I think it is getting on for 8 o'clock. So next week, please come, because Richard is going to be here, and come back the week after that, Ajahn Barry. And meantime, thanks for coming tonight. Stay safe. Take care.
There's one more question there, Colin. I just sent it to you. Sorry.
Okay.
I just got it. I just received it.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Let me just read it. I think this is I've got to answer it. Say something about it. Okay. This is a good question. What about, that's nice. What about finding lockdown more, that's in capital, what about finding lockdown more difficult now than earlier? What can we do to cope now that the war effort is not so intense? What can we do now the war effort is not so intense? How can we get back that energy and zeal to cope and find compassion that we had before? Oh, well, I mean, first of all, I don't know how you see what's going on. I mean, I try and follow the data on all of this, and the so-called war effort. I mean, I've had my jab, but I don't see this. Frankly, I'm not trying to create any more anxiety, but I'm not booking my holidays yet. It's as simple as that. So that's my first take on it. But getting back the energy and zeal to cope, I may have said this on a previous occasion, but it's like, you know, yeah, there are these constraints and I don't want to do it. And, you know, I've had my jab or whatever it is, and I want to go out and hug the world. It's all this kind of thing, which is quite understandable. But, you know, why are we doing this? Really, we're doing this. I'm doing it, you know, I mean, frankly, for the benefit of other people. It's as simple as that, actually. I mean, there was, you know, it's like, I mean, and me, because as I say, I'm not persuaded that, you know, I'm not persuaded that you know, I am immune to catching this virus. I'm not. But I certainly don't want to give it to anybody else. That's for sure. That is for sure. So I view, being a good boy with the lockdown, even though I'm sure it can be a bit of a drag because it prevents me from doing what otherwise I'd like to do. Actually, I'm doing it for the benefit of other people. And I really do believe that, you see. So that's my motivation, I suppose, really. There we go. Any more questions? Wondu, is there anything else coming through?
That's it. I don't have no more questions yet.
Okay. Thanks for your comments, everybody.
Thank you.
See you whenever. Bye-bye.